every new season in Splatoon 3, we get 2 new stages. Sometimes they're ports from the 2 previous games, and sometimes they're brand new. And for the most recent chill season, we got Bluefin Depot and Robo ROM-en. These maps are so intriguing because they're unlike anything we've had so far in Splatoon 3, and it's been really fun learning them and their particularities. So in this video, I will talk about the new chill season stages. I'll share my opinion on them and certain mode-specific changes, along with a couple tips I've gathered so far. One of these maps is pretty controversial, so keep in mind that these are just my thoughts from a purely casual perspective. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's start off with a Splatoon 1 port, Bluefin Depot. This is a stage I have mixed feelings about, and you're gonna see why. So let's start with some generalities that show up in pretty much every mode. The first thing you probably noticed with this stage is that it's more square-shaped than most maps, with an emphasis on the separation between the left and right side. There's this massive trench that separates the major sides in mid, but in most modes there's a platform that connects them. There's also some elevators that lead to the spawn areas and activate when a player steps on them. 2 on each side, 1 right out of spawn and 1 on the left flank. These parts of Bluefin are really interesting. I like that the overall layout is more wide and plays with the separation between both left and right. And the elevators that move on command are a nice addition that add a lot to anarchy modes. These unique features are what makes Bluefin fun for me. Maybe they're not too special, but they're different enough to make me think about how to approach this stage because the layout is so different from long, narrow map number 75. But as I mentioned, there are a few things I do not feel as good about. One of them is the terrain in mid, especially around those brick walls. It's like the devs had a flat ground, realized there wasn't any cover, and just added a wall because they didn't know how else to deal with it. Admittedly, this is kind of a nitpick and the walls do their job, but those areas feel very confused to me. But the one thing that everyone has pointed out already, but I will too because it's absurdly bad, those railings. I know they're there to warn players there's water underneath, but the problem is that they often kill your momentum and you end up dying in the water anyway when you would have made the jump. No idea how anyone thought adding those would be a good idea. But Bluefin does have a few mode-specific changes that I think are worth talking about. In Splat Zones, the zone is on this wooden platform that moves from side to side depending on which team is in control. If your team is in control, the zone will move to the left side of the map that's closer to the enemy spawn. And it's the same thing if they're in control. I honestly really like this. A moving zone is such a fun idea, and it makes you think more about how to approach it depending on the state of the game. The only thing I don't really like is how there's that trench that appears once the zone is on one side. Sometimes the zone starts moving when I'm trying to get off and I just die. There's not much to note on tower control apart from the comically tall tower. I believe it's to easily get on or off it from the ramps in mid, but at any other time it's kinda useless. It feels unnatural and kinda weird, but at least it's funny, so it gets a pass. When it comes to Rainmaker, I really don't like the checkpoint placements. The left one is too easy to access, kinda like ship shape, and the right one is too hard to access and becomes a total stallfest. Rainmaker is probably Bluefin's worst mode if I'm being honest. Clam Blitz mostly depends on how aware both teams are. It can be really easy to flank and score, but against a team that will check that flank, you might have to use the more direct route where it's way harder to score. The opposing team has high ground over you from their spawn, so you often have to force your way in with specials. By the way, I highly recommend using your maps or looking back sometimes on this stage because it can be very easy for an opponent to flank you if you're not paying attention to that. I know a lot of more competitive players really dislike Bluefin, and I can totally see it being painful in a coordinated environment where people are paying attention to flanks. I personally do still enjoy Bluefin overall for its layout and uniqueness, but it's true some questionable choices have been made here, so I understand the criticism. It probably feels much better casually. Now let's move on to our second stage, Robo ROM-en. This is a completely new map and it might be one of my favorites in the whole game. It plays a lot with height and there are a ton of ramps, which is really refreshing. Many of the Splatoon 3 maps have felt very flat, but this one doesn't, and it adds a lot of depth to the gameplay. The spawn area has a lot of cover and high ground to defend, and there's multiple routes to get back in so lockouts don't happen as often as they do on other maps like Hammerhead. And you are never going to believe this, but ROM-en has full flanks and a ton of inkable walls. These flanks let you go under and around mid unnoticed and let you distract and apply pressure from multiple angles. I definitely recommend using these flanks and the map's geometry to your advantage. I haven't seen many people use different routes yet because we're so used to only having one route into mid and we just don't think about using the other ones, but they can be so helpful to gain control. They also make it so that enemy backlines are easier to reach and counter, so their presence isn't as oppressing as usual. ROM-en feels very natural and fair to me. It lets us use all of the game's mechanics to our advantage, and the layout makes it feel like you can always get back in and have a chance at winning even when the opposing team is in control. I actually do not have any complaints for the general layout apart from mid feeling a bit cramped sometimes. For specific modes, that cramped feeling does come back more in Splat zones since that area is the main focus, but I usually use the flanks anyway, so it's not too bad. By the way, this spot on the wall is underrated. It gives you great high ground and I can see it being a good spot for any anchors. Tower control has this very interesting path where the tower goes down after the first checkpoint. I like the idea and I find it fun, but the problem is that it very rarely gets past that point even after 5 minutes. The terrain there can feel a bit awkward at times, but the inkable walls do help a lot with mobility. Despite its flaws, I actually find tower control quite fun because the map itself is really good. And finally, Clamblitz and Rainmaker have a very similar layout. I love that there's added cover with these grates, and there's this box that lets you get in the opposite spawn. It's not on any other modes, but it's a really cool addition that gives you an extra route to score. Overall, I am very impressed with Robo ROM-en. It's hard to not sound like I'm spreading ROM-en propaganda whenever I speak about it because there's so little to criticize. Like, I had to look to find things to dislike about this map, and even then they're only nitpicks. Chill Season introduced Bluefin Depot and Robo ROM-en. Despite some flaws on Bluefin, the maps have gradually gotten better and better with each season, and I'm really happy with these stages. I'll always find things to criticize, but it's important to give credit where it's due. I mean, it's insane to think about how much the maps have actually improved. Last Chill Season we got Brine Water, and this one we got ROM-en. The difference is crazy. While ports do still need some work, I'm confident that the devs have finally figured out how to approach original maps in this game with Crableg, Ship Shape, and now ROM-en. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you think about these new stages. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye!